The past few months have been huge milestones for Google as of late, and they've been gaining a ton of momentum. Of course, we got the release of the Pixel 9 series, the official Android 15 update, huge strides in AI advancements, plus a ton more. But there's also a major antitrust lawsuit happening right now between Google and the Department of Justice that could shake things up quite a bit depending on the outcome. So real quick, I wanted to cover what this lawsuit is all about from an easy to understand perspective, go over the potential outcomes, and how it might affect Android and its user base moving forward, because the implications are pretty major to say the least. And of course, if you enjoy any videos on all things Google and Android, consider subscribing to the channel because we have a ton more content pieces like this coming your way. Now, look, I'm certainly not a legal expert here, just a simple tech enthusiast presenting my best interpretation of what is actually happening here. This whole Google antitrust situation is super complex, and with appeals and more court battles on the horizon, we have a long way to go. Realistically, things could change in a pretty big way between now and the final verdict, so take everything with a grain of salt. That said, we should still go over what's going on. Long story short, and massively oversimplifying here, back in 2020, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against Google claiming they were acting like a monopoly to stay on top of the search engine market. Basically, the DOJ's issue is with how Google paid a ton of money to device makers, carriers, and developers to make Google search the default option on their products. The most notable example, of course, is the $26 billion payment Google made to Apple, keeping Google search the default option on their iPhones. Fast forward 4 years later to August 2024, and the court decided with the DOJ saying Google did act like a monopoly, and those payments to be the default search engine were illegal as it prevented other search engines from competing fairly. Which, in a way, does make sense with Google's infinite amount of cash. I'm sure they can definitely outspend any smaller startups, let's say. Because of the court's decision, the DOJ has presented a few ideas on how to fix this monopolistic behavior. First up, they might actually break up Google. This would no doubt be the biggest and most drastic decision, potentially splitting things off like Android and Chrome into their own separate companies. The second option is to give Google's competitors more resources by mandating that Google creates an API that allows rivals to tap into its search indexes, data feeds, algorithms, and even search rankings. That way, rival competitors can use Google's massive amount of data to improve their own search engines. Third, the DOJ might put a ban on the use of those exclusive contracts, meaning the $26 billion iPhone situation, for example, might not ever happen again. Fourth, with AI becoming such a big deal in search, the DOJ might try to make sure Google can't use its search dominance to give its own AI products an unfair advantage, or, in other words, this might stop Google from forcing websites to allow content to be used in various AI products. And the fifth proposition I wanted to highlight, the DOJ wants to make sure users know they have choices. This could mean Google has to support educational campaigns that inform users about the range of available search engine offerings and encourage them to explore alternatives outside of Google search. Of course, Google wasn't exactly thrilled about these ideas, and they ended up responding with a blog post of their own, which I will link below, discussing their counter argument. Basically, they point out breaking up Chrome and Android would effectively break those products by making them less accessible and undermining Android and Google Play's ability to compete with Apple and the App Store. They also defended their exclusivity payments to be the default search engine, saying that it actually helps users and supports smaller companies like Mozilla and Android manufacturers that rely on those payments for revenue. Without those payments, the cost of those products might go up to compensate for the loss of income. And about that forced data sharing aspect, Google says it's a big privacy and security risk. They claim sharing data with other companies could lead to breaches and misuse, as their measures to keep user data safe might not be up to par with Google's standard, which, for such a big company they are, I'm sure they have the best of the best security measures. There's a few more points Google did bring up that I do encourage you to check out for yourself, but from my understanding, Google is basically saying that these proposed remedies are over the top, could stifle innovation, and hurt consumers way more than they help. So that's a quick summary of what's going on right now, and as you can tell, there's some pretty big implications that could come from this. For now, there isn't much to look out for, as the next major milestone is a trial scheduled in spring of 2025, where the DOJ and Google will present their arguments regarding the potential remedies to address its monopolistic practices related to online search. Then, in August of 2025, the judge will make a decision on which, if any, of the DOJ's proposals will actually happen. Of course, no matter the decision, this is far from over, as Google is already planning to appeal the court's rulings, and those appeals could take years to resolve. So even if the DOJ does get its way, it could be a long time before we see any real changes. In terms of how this will affect Android users, I wouldn't worry too much, at least for now. As I said, it could take years before we see any major impact on Android. August 2025 is about 10 months away at the time of this recording. The appeals might take a few years to conclude, and whatever is mandated might take a few years to actually implement as well. Like if they separated Chrome and Android, for example, that alone could probably be a multi-year process. If these remedies do go through, I can definitely see higher prices for Android phones, no doubt, maybe more competition in the search engine space and the App Store world, which, hey, more options are always good, so there's definitely pros and cons to this situation. But there is a part of this I do agree with Google completely on, which is how they need to keep their services paired to stay competitive with Apple and the iPhone. Breaking things up too much could definitely hurt the Android ecosystem, at least in my opinion, and I think no matter the ruling, as long as Google can stay equally competitive with Apple while addressing the monopolistic practices, that would probably be the best case scenario for everyone. At least for now, don't spend too much time worrying about it, as this whole antitrust situation is complex and ever evolving. But I wanted to give you the rundown on what we know so far, as I felt there wasn't any easily digestible pieces of content on the topic. So I hope this video helped break it down for you. That said, let me hear from you guys in the comments section. What do you think of this whole antitrust situation? Do you think breaking up Google is the right move? And if you had to decide how things would play out, what changes would you make? We have a long road ahead of us, and I'm very curious to hear what thoughts that you guys have, so leave a comment and let me know, as this is a pretty big situation. In the meantime, I'm getting out of here, but before I do, huge shout out to our channel members on screen right now. Simply put, Damien and I work super hard here around the clock at 9 to 5 Google to make the best Android content possible, and your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you all for following us every step on the way. We see and appreciate every one of you. Don't forget to grab the October wallpaper pack in the community post, and if you want to gain access for yourself, hit the join button to learn more, as we would love to have you join our community. Until next time, this has been Jordan Floyd with 9 to 5 Google. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.